Okay, so finally, let's go back to our register model.js and simply see if we are getting a response back. So let's do console.log response. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is now we need to implement the JSON response function we just implemented in our request handler. So we can go ahead and delete all these lines and instead say self JSON response, and we need to pass in a status code. So the status code will be our status variable we have defined up here. And then now we need to pass in our keyword argument. So we need to type in the double star and say JSON response. Okay, so now this should be working. Let's go back to our browser and see if this is working. Okay, so let's just refresh this page, hit register, open up our console to see if we're logging a response and hit register. And we see we are getting a 400 back, which is what we declared in our status. And then here in the object, we see that we're receiving a JSON with a message, please fill in your password in order to continue, and the title is please type in a password. Okay, so good. This is looking pretty good. So now, how do we extract this information and put it into each of these elements? So we need to put in the title where the title belongs and the message where the message belongs. Now, if you inspect this object, we can see that we have a response text. So this is a text, and parsing this will be difficult if we don't convert it into JSON. So, we could convert it into JSON, but we don't need to, because in the response we are already receiving a response JSON. And by the way, the jQuery framework is responsible for creating all of this response and the JSONs and the text and so on and so forth. So it's work we don't need to do, because jQuery does it for us. So here we can inspect the response JSON. And here we see that we have a key of message and a key of title and the appropriate messages and text we have for both. So we can simply access this object here, so response JSON, and then navigate down into each of these elements. Okay, so let's see how we do this. Let's go back to our register model.js, and here we can say, let's say var title is equal to response, because it's the entire response, and then we can say it was called response JSON, so we can say response JSON. So like that, we're accessing this object here, and now we can key into message and title. Okay, so this is the title case, so we can key into title, and then we can do the same thing for message. So I'm just going to duplicate this line and call this message, and then key into message. Okay, good. Now we can substitute this with title and substitute this with message. Okay, good. Let's see if this is working again. Refresh, register, and we see this is working. So this is fantastic. Now, you may be wondering, why is it showing us the case of password when we haven't filled out any of these? Well, let's go back to our Python code and see what's happening. What's happening here is, since we're not receiving any value, we're going into the else case, and the else case we're saying, if we don't find the name, set the JSON response to whatever we have set here. So it goes ahead and sets the JSON response to this. Then in the next line, we see if we don't receive an email, which again, we haven't received it because we're not sending anything in this case, go ahead and set the JSON response to this. And then in the last case, we're saying if we don't receive a password, which we're also not receiving, go ahead and set the JSON response to this. Now we are rewriting the JSON response every time we go through here, because we're not assigning any value. For the time being, we're going to leave this as is. This may not be the cleanest functionality, but eventually, whenever you type in a password, you will get another error. See, now it's asking us for an email, and finally it's asking us for a name. Okay, this may not be the best functionality, but I highly encourage you, to change this up and see how you can improve this, and I encourage you to play with this logic and see how you can improve on this. Okay. But for the time being, for this course, we're going to leave this as is, because the point was here to learn how to return a error response and make the jQuery parse our response and put all the values, where they should be. Okay, great. So let's move along.